Everyone, welcome to our webinar today at AgForce and AGDATA Australia. Can everyone hear me okay? Please mention in the chat. All right, so just a bit of housekeeping before we get going. My name is Nicole, I'm from AgForce and I'll be your moderator today. Just a couple of housekeeping matters. This webinar is in listen-only mode. If you'd like to ask a question during the presentation, simply type your question into the chat box. It's on the bottom left corner of your screen. If you're having trouble hearing the audio on the webinar, please call Redback Conferencing on 1-800-896-323 and enter your participant code to hear over the phone. If you're still having problems, please call Redback Client Support 1800-733-416 and also quote your participant code there for technical support. So during the webinar, you might be asked some questions. They'll pop up as a poll. Please click the appropriate answer if you'd like to share. At the end of the webinar, you might be prompted to answer. Please take the time as it helps us improve our webinars. So let's move on. Today we are lucky enough to have Kerry Lynn Ray from AGDATA Australia. She describes her role as helping people, families, agribusiness owners and managers to figure out where they are, where they want to be and how their software can help them get there. Now AGDATA today will discuss relevant information pertaining to Single-Touch-Payroll and your obligations to the ATO. Then she's going to show us a demonstration of AGDATA's new Phoenix payroll tool. So without further ado, I welcome Kerry Lynn to the presentation. Kerry Lynn, take it away.
No worries. Thanks, Nicole. That's a line I haven't heard from a while, actually, in that introduction. I explain myself really these days as just tech support and trainer, certainly for AGDATA. I've worked here a little while now. I can recognise some names coming in on the presentation that probably know me and have either trained with me out in the field or certainly been some assistance on some tech desks. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm extremely happy to be. As Nicole suggested, everything that you want to communicate to me has to be via that particular chat line. I am flying solo. I have wonderful Nicole here with me, but I'm flying solo as the presenter for today in regards to the content. So if I can keep an eye on that chat line, I will, and I'll address that question if it's very relevant to what I'm going through. Outside of that, I'll give you plenty of time at the end that you can certainly ask questions via that chat line and we'll certainly respond to them, all of that sort of thing. Essentially, from my point of view, I just need to go over with you what Single-Touch-Payroll is and your compliance with it, because we are talking compliance at the end of the day. And certainly, if you're using Phoenix or want to use Phoenix and Payroll, then how that product will meet that requirement for you. So I'll just cover exactly what we're going to cover today, which is essentially meeting your Single-Touch-Payroll compliance, the benefits for using payroll as an employer and an employee, for all of this hard work that you're doing to meet the compliance. What do you actually get out of it? There's actually some really great stuff. So I'll show you that as we're going along, and certainly the benefits of Single-Touch-Payroll to you, having had to do all this work and report it all to the ATO. There are some actual benefits to you as the business as well. So I'll go through a lot of that with you, but we're looking at 30 minutes today, so I'm going to keep it nice and light and brief and breezy, and I'll take you straight across to our content, which is essentially Single-Touch-Payroll. Okay, so if you're working within Phoenix and Phoenix Payroll, you're going to meet the compliance really quite easily. What I do want to explain to you, though, is about the compliance. Okay, so I've taken these specific wordings from the ATO website, and there is the link there, but if you just go to ato.gov.au, then you'll get straight through to that information. I've used their terminology here so that you can interpret it, okay? Not my interpretation, it's just simply theirs. So as it states there, Single-Touch-Payroll, or we've nicknamed it, and everybody has in the industry because it's a big long word, to STP, is a new way of reporting tax and super information to the ATO. STP works by sending tax and super information from your payroll or accounting software as you run your payroll. So as you're processing pay runs, you'll essentially lodge them with the ATO. And you must meet that compliance for small employers with 19 or less employees. You'll need to start reporting through STP from the 1st of July 2019. Most of you will be aware of the window they've given you from the 1st of July through to the 30th of September to get that compliance in place. We're coming very soon to that 30th, today being the 25th. So I would encourage you, if you haven't done anything, that you really need to get on top of it as soon as possible. Now, to put it in a nutshell for you, if you employ 19 or less staff, then you are required to report through STP things like your year-to-date figures, gross wage, PAYG, tax withheld, super guarantee or SGC, all of that now has to go through to the ATO. There are lots of other things, but most people understand those particular requirements there. I would suggest that if you have questions or you would like to read the information from the ATO, that you actually go to ato.gov.au, Single-Touch-Payroll. There is lots of details. They've got pages and pages and pages of it. I've picked out the specific stuff that really means whether you've got to be there or not, and how you meet that compliance. And there are different options depending on how many people you employ, and what their determination of where you fit in their sort of gaps or boxes that they've created. So there is more than one option, but certainly payroll software will meet it in our case. The one thing I would like to note is that AGDATA doesn't provide any legal advice. I'll give you some options for resources. Okay, so the best places to seek advice on Single-Touch-Payroll is your accountant or the ATO directly, so ato.gov.au. And then for legal advice around employees and entitlements and all of those sorts of things, certainly would go through to your human resources consultant or Fair Work, which most of us call the Fair Work Australia website. They're very good, and they do have leave calculators, and you can call them and all of those sorts of things. So we can't help you with that, but the payroll software will certainly meet the compliance. We as techs are guided by you. What you want to do in your software and how you do it is how we assist you with it. So I'm going to actually give you a little bit of a look at how you're going to meet that particular compliance. So I'll just pop you back here. Sorry, a bit of a double click. And screen sharing has gone off. I do apologise. Should be up and running now. Can you see my Phoenix screen? Pop a message in that chat line for me. Wonderful. Okay, good. That's the, we got in nice and early, and of course it just managed to turn itself off. But certainly that's Phoenix. If you're using Phoenix, you'd certainly know that particular screen. How you meet the compliance within Phoenix and Phoenix Payroll is very simple. So this is Phoenix version 9, and you'll notice we now have a payroll button. Okay, so that payroll button is where you'll launch payroll. Like all software, you need to set up your payroll. And to do this, what we've done is under your help question mark button, you've got video tutorials. There are 5 short, sharp, to the point setup videos. We went through as techs and went, there's a lot of stuff that you can set up in here, but what would give you a basic setup? And that's what we've given you in those videos. Outside of that, if you still need assistance, AGDATA will still provide our usual tech support over the phone. Okay, so you'll set up payroll. Once you've got payroll set up, then you'll essentially go into payroll and you'll start the pay run. So all I'm doing is launching payroll. Can everyone see payroll? Give me a yes, a no. I think you've got a cog wheel that can give me some notifications that you're happy or you're sad. Yeah, so you can see it. Okay. In my case, to make this webinar really time efficient for you, what I've done is essentially set up a payroll. It's dummy data at the end of the day, and I have processed pay runs, set up my employees, all sorts of those things. So that is a working payroll business there in front of you. You can guess that I have done a lot of work because there is a gadget in the top, and it tells me all of my pay as the business. Okay. You'll notice over on the right-hand side, there's an Enable Single-Touch Payroll button. This is one of your setup tasks in setting up payroll. By clicking your Enable Single-Touch Payroll, this essentially provides details to the ATO to hook up your payroll business to the ATO system for your business or ABN so that you can report the information through. Okay, so that's what it is. You'll set up your payroll, you'll set up your employees, you'll enable single-touch payroll, and then you'll process your pay runs. Now, in my case here, I'm going to show you a pay run and how easily it is created because that's where the main working comes in. Yes, we set up payroll and it takes us a little amount of time, but all of your working actually happens from then forward in pay runs. So I'm just going to move straight across to this little hand with the coin, into pay runs, and you'll see I've got quite a number of pay runs here. Okay, in my case, I'm just going to line up a nice new pay run for us today. So new pay run button. Now I have quite a number of different frequencies or schedules here. I'm going to work in my weekly schedule, and I've lined up the dates basically so that today will run very smoothly. I might put the date the pay run will be paid as today. Now in this case, you'll see here that I'm going to import some timesheets as well. Okay, so I have a worker on timesheets, and a benefit of the software that I'll come to a little later is I'm going to import those timesheets as they're coming through. So I'm just going to create a couple of seconds to bring it in. Haven't got too much in that one. And I have a pay run basically created in front of me. There's a little bit of work depending on how you've set it up. So my pay runs come up and I'm just going to go through this screen very, very simply for you. So I have the first worker in here. His name is Luke Martin, and he's on an award, and he's also submitting timesheets for me. Now what I can do is I can click on his name to expand him, and you'll see there in front of you he's got an award. It gives me this little asterisk here that says permanent 4-acre farming and some conditions from the award that apply. And part of all awards in the system is that they must submit timesheets. Okay, so he's certainly submitting timesheets for me, and they're all coming into my pay run. Now it's also, as per the award, dictating what overtime gets paid and what meal allowances, and it's got his leave accruals and all of that. That is if you are working specific to the award. Okay, I'm just going to shrink him up. And I'm going to show you, if we follow his name across to the right, it gives me his total hours, our gross earnings, our taxable earnings, our PAYG or tax withheld. We see the super guarantee, SGC, right down to his net earnings, what he actually gets in hand. Okay, so essentially all the details and documentations around the money he is being paid into his bank account. Okay, all of that. That makes sense to everyone. You look at that and go, oh, I get how that's coming in, or I understand, that's all the usual stuff we look at. See our chat line, yes, no. Terry, don't understand, what is that? Are you speaking Japanese? Got nothing popping up just yet, but I'll keep going. I'll go with Mike is my next guy. And he is very simple. So Mike with us isn't on an award. He's just with an agreed rate. I might be basing myself off the award, okay, but I'm always paying above it, or I'm always manually checking. And by not having the award, it allows me to just say, look, these are his permanent ordinary hours. This is his standard hours in the week, and this is his standard amount of pay. And of course, because he's a full-time with us, there are some leave accruals coming in here. Okay, so they're coming up all nice. I will come back to that, Bill. Give me 1 sec. I'm going to shrink Mike up and I'm going to move to Natalie. So Natalie here, I have set up, okay, with what is a post-tax deduction. The name, and I've put in here a deduction. Now Natalie pays a significant amount of money out of her wages into what she calls a rent account. Okay, so she gets a large portion of it deducted off and paid into a particular rent account. Now the software can do that. The other thing I wanted to show you that is, particularly in your industry, some people are deducting for rent or accommodation, or they might be deducting for keep and things like that. If you are doing deductions, then they can flow through to the software nice and easy. Now she's a casual and I've got her set up for a standard 50 hours. That might be an agreement that she does that, or if I wanted to simply change the hours that she'd worked because she is purely casual, then I'll just go to that little hours there and change them to what she actually did work within that particular period. I'm going to shrink her up and I'm going to go to the last one, which is Peter, or Pedro we call him. And I wanted to show you something very specific to agriculture, which is seasonal workers. For example, fruit pickers, or like Peter, shearers. These types of seasonal workers don't work to a standard hours. They work to a fixed or piece rate, like sheep shorn or box picked, whatever that particular fixed rate is. Now I've clicked on Peter's name and you'll see there he has an earnings line which is a little bit different. He's got shearer, piecework, flock sheep. Okay, and his units are always different. Every time that shearer comes on to the place or the property, he might shear a different number. So all I do is pop in how many shore and I'll click save, and then now it's brought in my gross earnings, my taxable earnings, PAYG, super guarantee, right down to his net earnings. You'll notice there at the start there's no total hours because essentially he doesn't work an hours with us. I'll shrink him up. That's a pay run. And that's covering a large portion of what you might be doing. People who are working towards, people who aren't working towards, people who have casuals, and then certainly people who have fixed or piece rates, like shearers and things like that. There was a question by Bill about the exclamation. Basically, that little exclamation is a warning. There's no ABA details, so if you wanted to use an ABA file out of the system, I haven't set up for that, and the expense on one of them doesn't have a tax code. So very simple things. Warnings don't block you from finalising pay runs. They're just little identifiers to try and help you see if there's an issue with that one. Elaine, there is no appropriate answer that I can give you for how to deal with flexi time. That's an agreement between you and your employees. I do see a large range of our client base adapt toil, we call it, time owed in lieu, toil, and that can certainly come in as a leave accrual, or they can take leave, or toil they call it, out of the system as well. That's a good option, but it just comes down to how you're actually working with your particular employees. I'll move you back to the presentation. 1 second. And I'll just show you how you actually meet the compliance. Now, essentially, in dummy data like I've got there, in that particular payroll, I can't set up with an ATO a dummy account that'll allow me to lodge pay runs with them, because it doesn't happen. They won't accept that, and understandably why. But what I've got there on screen for you is exactly a pay run that has been finalised, and all it has been done is now you've got your lodge with ATO button. Okay, so your process in payroll, and specifically to meet your STP compliance, is to create a pay run, ensure all the details are correct, all of their gross earnings, taxable, PAYG, all of that is correct, and then you're going to finalise the pay run and lodge it with the ATO. Now what I've given you there on screen is the wording from the ATO. You are required to report a pay day event to the ATO on or before the payday. The payday is either the payment date stipulated in the electronic transaction to your financial institution, or if you did not stipulate a date for payment, the date you intend to make the payment into your employee's bank account. It's important that you understand that particular text. I explain it to clients as in the ATO want to receive the information no later than when the employees are paid. So you can come in on the day you're going to pay them or before, finalise your pay runs and lodge it with the ATO. They don't want to receive it after the fact. Okay. The further details on that specific stuff, ato.gov.au is your best bet. I will keep you moving. I'll move you across to some of the benefits now. So that's pretty much all Phoenix and all payroll and your STP compliance done. That's it. Create a pay run, finalise it, lodge it with the ATO, you're done. Move on. What else have you got to do? What we'll do for benefits though. So at the end of the day, we are talking compliance. You know, we all have to go here regardless. But there are some benefits for moving to Single-Touch-Payroll, and they basically are those 3 boxes there. I've boxed them in a little bit, but no manual payment summaries at end of financial year. So there's no paperwork or manual payment summaries at the end of financial year for you. These are essentially done through the payroll software, and they're published to the employees and lodged with the ATOs then and there within the software. So one button click and it's all done. Lodging your BAS GST, the PAYG component that you would normally enter for your W1 and W2 codes or wages when you're doing your BAS. These are available in your portal if you're lodging through the portal. In some cases, we have heard they are pre-filled in the W1 and W2, and for others it hasn't been. We don't have a clear indication from the ATO on why this happens, and for some and not others, but essentially the ATO already knows what you owe them for PAYG as the pay runs were lodged with them. Okay, within the payroll system, there is actually a PAYG report you can run as well to cross-check. But they essentially now have all that information. You still have to lodge your PAYG as per usual though. Okay. The third thing here is no manual wages books. All your information is now stored in your payroll software and therefore can be easily accessible. Something we don't like to talk about very often because we hope that it never happens is disaster recovery. If you're using manual wages books and you were to lose your office through fire or flood or whatever it is essentially, you may have lost all of that information as well. In regards to Phoenix Payroll, you'll essentially, even if you lost your computer, you'd get your Phoenix back on a new one. You would restore your data and you'd simply be able to access your payroll again. Dana, I'll come back to that question in just towards the end if I can. The next thing I'll just cover with you is benefits for employers. Okay, so you as the employers, what do you get as a benefit out of payroll software? And it's simply the first thing is meeting that compliance. And that's the main reason why most people have gone to payroll is to meet that compliance at this point in time. The other thing you've got through Phoenix itself is between financials and payroll integration. So that integration allows you to process your pay runs in the payroll and then easily import them back into Phoenix. So this essentially means that you don't have to manually enter wages transactions anymore. Those transactions from payroll are imported and the transactions are put in the system for you. I've got there listed basic system or extensive tool. Basically, over the last few months, I've worked with clients making the system very simple, just recording the details, meeting the STP compliance. But then on the other hand, I've worked with some clients making it a very extensive tool, bringing in rule sets to manage leave entitlements, overtime, time in lieu, creating a huge amount of automation in the software. Okay, so it can be very simple or it can be used extensively. It's just down to how you want to run it. Okay, employee management. This comes down to the availability for your employees to submit timesheets. You can clock them in and clock them out using GPS locations, times, dates, and even photographs of your employees if you require them. There's a fully integrated rostering system if you need it, employee expense reimbursement claims, keeping track of employee qualifications. I see that one as a great one. Chemical certification, when they expire, all of that can actually be put in the system, and it'll give you some notification when they're coming due and that sort of thing. I've got here certainly employee self-service portal or apps like WorkZone or ClockMe. So these allow your employees to do employee management, which is basically timesheets, clocking in, clocking out, applying for leave. That's all done through the system, and then you have an approval process. You can say yes or no, or what you need to do as the employer. There's a superannuation clearinghouse called Beam. This is an inbuilt clearinghouse which is provided free of charge for those lodging super or SGC quarterly. Okay, all the quarterly stuff, it's all provided free of charge. Payroll automation. Have the payroll software generate the pay runs for you. So if you're a very standard, they're here, they're full-time, they get paid the same amount of money, weekend, fortnight, whatever it is that you pay, you can actually automate your software to do that. Note that it will not lodge it to the ATO for you. You must come and accept the declaration and lodge it to the ATO, but it will do all of that payroll or pay run creation for you. One of my favourite things about it is direct access to consultants, bookkeepers or accountants. So they no longer have to get your Phoenix backup in order to access your payroll. They can actually get access to payroll through phoenix.yourpayroll.com.au. There is for you a little step that you must set them up as a user to your payroll, and that's simply their name and their email address. So quick access for them. Benefits for employees. Okay, so as an employee, self-service portal and apps like WorkZone and ClockMe, they can submit all their timesheets, apply for leave, get all of their payslip notifications, clock in and clock out, and they can manage all of their personal details. If their bank accounts change, if their superannuation accounts change, they change addresses, all of that can now be done by them. They don't have to give you an email or give you a piece of paper. That can all be done by them. And they can submit expense reimbursement claims. So essentially, if they had to go somewhere for you and they had to pay for it out of their own pocket, and then you were going to give them back the money and expense reimbursement, they can apply for that all through those apps or through that portal access. Okay, so, and that can be done app or in the internet browser like Chrome or Internet Explorer or anything like that. Lastly, I would just like to tell you about the design of the software. It's designed to record everything. Employee details, record and accrue leave entitlements, record your terminations, record your PAYG and SGC, and lots more. So it's specifically designed as payroll software for you as employers and employees. It meets both sides, okay, not just employers but also that employee side, and it's got lots of things in there, and that's what it's designed to do specifically for you. I have a few questions. I know we're hitting right on time. I do apologise. It's a little bit to go through when it's, particularly when it's compliance. Jane had a question about how to handle check payments and a pay date. Essentially, just like we would in financials, when you hand the person the check, that is that particular pay date. Whether they, when you hand the person the check, that is that particular pay date. Whether they cash it on that day or they take 3 months to cash it, that is their onus, not yours. It essentially goes in the day that you hand the check to them. Elaine has a question, how do you set up an EBA that is not listed in the pre-built list? An enterprise bargaining agreement can be set up within the system. I have only done this once or twice, and more so in a dummy scenario than a client scenario. It would come down to the enterprise agreement itself and what was in there, and it would come down to whether it is manually tracked or whether you're wanting to set up rule sets that will then adhere that EBA agreement. So there's a little bit of complexity there. It can be done, but it's a little bit of a setup. So that's getting into the extensive tool part of the program, which is certainly there, but would take a little bit of setup. And I'd suggest that you certainly talk to one of us on tech. And, sorry, Elaine's got another question. Just how do you handle information for an employee that has left your employment prior to commencing single-touch payroll reporting. If you have, well, the first question would be if you had paid them from the 1st of July to the 30th of September. If they had been paid in any of that time frame, then certainly they would, most probably the ATO would like you to report them through Single-Touch Payroll. If you don't have the information that you would require for Single-Touch Payroll, then I would suggest that you contact your accountant or the ATO directly and see what they would recommend in that case. If you've got the detail, then we would suggest that you put it through in the actual system and lodge it through to the ATO. When you terminate them, because they're no longer under your employment, then they'll do a little tick box that says is final, and that means it's the final payment for this financial year for that employer for you as the payroll business. So the system will handle that perfectly fine, and you can backdate it if it's a little bit older, like the 1st of July through to August stuff. You can do that, and it can be lodged to the ATO, but you'd need the information in order to do it. If you don't have the information, then it would be thrown back to the ATO as to what they would like you to do, whether you do have to do a manual payment summary at end of financial year for them. Kerry has a question, can you combine piece rates plus hourly rates in the one pay period? Absolutely. I have many clients that have done that. I've covered that today with a client on tech support this morning. You might have casual or ordinary hours because they're a casual to you, and then they, for instance, did some shearing or some crutching for you in that same day. There'd be one pay line for hours, and then there'd be another pay line which is essentially for crutching. So have as many pay categories or pay lines as you like. Nadine, I found that the award in the pre-built list is higher than Fair Work. Is this correct? At this stage, I only have information that the awards within the system are working to Fair Work Australia, and any update that comes from them as to what those awards would be. I would just recommend that you go back to Fair Work Australia. There was an update for the particular pastoral industry awards, which came in and around the start of the year, and then another one, I believe, in and around that July area. So if you've got a difference there, I'd certainly be just double checking Fair Work Australia as to whether which rate should be correct. As far as I'm aware in the system, that will always adhere to any update that they have. If you've got those questions, pop them in. I know we've gone a couple of minutes over time. I do apologise. I have done a little bit of a test on my notes and all sorts of things to try and make it very time efficient, but you never know what happens in webinars. And sometimes there's technical difficulties or anything like that that pop up that just pushes over time, but certainly we're not sitting too bad for time. If you've been in a webinar with me before, I unfortunately tend to go over time just much. But the content hopefully will have addressed all of those questions that you've got. I'll flick you back to the screen share just so that you can have a look at that pay run. That's just a nice, smooth, easy, very simple pay run. It does meet some complexities with different fixed rates and awards and timesheets and all of those sorts of things. But then again, you can keep it very, very simple depending on your situation. I'll just make sure that you haven't got any further questions. So if you've got them, pop them in. I'd probably just like a response as to whether you have done anything about your single-touch payroll compliance. So is the majority of people here having done something, whether it's Phoenix or whether it's a third-party product, or whether you've gone with some of the deferment options from the ATO, that sort of thing. So it would be worthwhile if you could give me an indication whether you have done something. Outside of that, you don't have to. If you don't want to say, then that's perfectly fine as well. I have no issues with that. For me as a tech support, I have certainly been working very hard to keep everybody up to date with what they've got in that compliance. And we have seen certainly a big amount of tech support come on board for it. So we do have a backlog every now and again, but certainly it's we get back to as soon as we can. So yeah, so there's quite a few people who are ready to roll or have started. And then some people are still going with it, that's fine. I just suggest some people think that they don't have to do compliance because they don't have any employees just yet, particularly for seasonal workers. You know, I don't employ anyone normally, but I have 15 shearers that come on board once or twice a year. You still need to set up and you still need to enable single-touch payroll to meet that compliance by the 30th of September. Otherwise, I'd encourage you to contact the ATO. Few chats going on, lots of people having tried to set up, needing to watch a few videos, not yet set up. Got a little bit of a tag. Would have thought that it would be that. We're certainly seeing that on tech support. We're still getting people not sure about their compliance yet. Amanda's got a question particularly about full-time employees on day rates and whether you're better to set up as piece rates or hourly rates and set them to say 10 hours. I would suggest that where possible, always go back to an hourly rate, particularly for full-time workers. The system in Phoenix Payroll will work on leave entitlements off an hourly basis. So as per Fair Work Australia, how they accrue the leave entitlement is based off their standard hours or hours of work to get them their leave entitlement. So I would set up a standardised hours and how you deal with that, you know, flexibly in your business is your choice, but the payroll system needs to see what hours they're working, even if you pay day rates, what hours they're working in order to accrue the leave entitlements correctly. So I'd certainly suggest, where possible, go back to an hourly rate. Oh, AusKeys, Nadine, yes, aren't they just the funnest thing in the world? I would suggest if you're having trouble with the single touch payroll and compliance, particularly around how you enable it with AusKeys and things like that, I'd encourage you to ring this number. That's the ATO line for single touch payroll compliance and enabling it, that 1300 852 232. That will certainly get you through to their team, that they will either assist you or they'll put you through to the right department that will assist you. So that's a great number to keep if you do have troubles with that single touch payroll. Yeah, great. Okay. It is a bit tricky, yes. So great comments coming through. If you've got questions, I certainly would pop them in. I'm more than happy to keep it open just for a couple more minutes, but Kerry, it should be in that chat line there, but it's essentially 1300 852 232. If you enable single touch payroll within the system in Phoenix Payroll, it will give you that 1300 number as well as an option, or to log into your Access Manager through the ATO with an AusKey. There's a couple of different ways that you can enable the system. But that particular number does get you through to an area that is in the ATO that is aware of the single touch payroll. If you're all done with questions, I'll stay here, but I'll throw back to Nicole and she can cover off on any of the ending stuff for you.
Thank you for an informative session today, Carolyn. That was all fantastic, and that was some very clear demonstrations of the software as well. It looks like a great system. Thank you so much for today. I believe we have a special coming up in our spring edition of Envoy, the AgForce Quarterly magazine. That'll be coming out to members' mailboxes over the next couple of days. Attendees, please complete the quick survey that's up on your screen. That'll just help us improve our webinars. We'd love to hear your feedback. An email to the webinar recording will be sent to you in the next day or two. And we really hope that everyone's had an enjoyable session today. I'm just about to pop a link in the chat as well about our next upcoming webinar, which is on Wednesday, the 9th of October. And this is for anyone who's attended an AgForce property computer mapping workshop, as well as anyone who would like a little bit more insight into AgData's Phoenix mapping system. So there we'll be looking at the integration of a farm management system and how that goes beyond simple data collection. So I'm just about to put that link into the chat there. I'll just give everyone a few more moments to complete that survey. Thank you so much again, Kerry Lynn, and yes, thank you for everyone who attended today.